Hey everyone, welcome back to another Access Adrenaline ride review. This time, we're taking a deep dive into the incredible Intamin mega coaster, Hyperion, at Energylandia in Poland. Somewhat strangely among the theme park industry at the time, this ride was born from fan choice, as there was a poll between two proposals, one from Intamin, one from Vekoma, for the hypercoaster that would become Hyperion in late 2016 and slated for opening in 2018. In the end, the Intamin proposal won out in a public vote, but both layouts were outwardly similar, with Energylandia opting for the tried and tested mega coaster model from Intamin for its floaty elements, interesting transitions, and above all, capacity. This leviathan of a coaster is the first impression you get of Energylandia when approaching from the Krakow direction of Zator, as its enormous turnaround element is framed by the trees on the approach to the park, and it really hypes you up for a day at the park. The elements on this ride are absolutely massive, and the hills and transitions serve up some of the best, but simultaneously some of the most psychotically violent forces a coaster of this kind possibly can. Hyperion is a ride of two halves, the first serving up a large concoction of absolutely bonkers airtime elements, before the spaghetti bowl style second half stays low to the ground and really showcases the insane velocity of this ride. Without wasting any more time, let's break down every aspect of this amazing ride in the usual fashion. First of all, we'll talk about the entry and the locker area. On approach to Hyperion, the area around the station looks very industrially themed, and the ride's logo plays a part in the entry experience as you enter through the giant O of Hyperion from the midway opposite Energus. Upon walking into the first hall, you're greeted with a massive locker room and two metal detectors. The lockers here are slightly different than in most areas of the park, and so here you can select a language between English and Polish, allocate a locker to yourself, where the system will automatically assign you a locker depending on what bank you choose or whether it's full, and then release the locker to you again once you've collected all your belongings. Once all of your belongings are stowed away, you head through one of the two metal detectors, and yes, you will be made to double back if there is any loose articles stowed away in cheeky hidden pockets. I was allowed to get away with my chest-mounted camera on all of my rides, but only because this had been security checked by Energylandia themselves on the entry into the park. Once through the metal detectors, there are two ways you can go depending on which queuing system you're choosing. To the left and up the stairs takes you into Hyperion's standby queue. To the front, you go through a doorway, scan your fast pass or energy pass at the turnstile, go up 3 stairs, and you're into the pre-staging area for the ride. Before we go on here, let's spend a brief moment talking about yet another egregious queue line here on Hyperion. If you go to the left after the metal detectors, please make sure you've not skipped leg day. Hyperion's regular queue line is ridiculously, utterly and pointlessly long when it's fully open. You first of all loop upwards on a series of about 4 to 5 ramps around the station building, before coming outside to a series of stairs that brings you back down to ground level. If this queue area is empty, it can take about 10 to 15 minutes to fully navigate this queue line from start to end. But if it's full on the outside, you can expect around a 60-minute wait before you get to the pre-staging area. Speaking of this is the area where riders are grouped by turnstiles before entering the ride area. There's 4 lines here: front row, single rider, and 2 lines of free-for-all queuing. Usually, the one furthest to the right is the one used by guests wanting to ride via the back row, and as such, a lot of people tend to go there, much the same as the front. Once clear of the turnstiles for the front row and single rider lines, you go up a few steps and you're waiting behind one of 3 doors for entering the station. Overall, this is an interesting queuing system, and not really one that's helpful for accessibility, especially if you're an ambulant rider or wheelchair user. But the one saving grace here is only having 3 steps if you use the fast pass and free-for-all queue. This would make things significantly easier to access than other rides at the park. Now let's move on to discuss the theming a little bit before jumping in to talk about the ride experience itself. The ride is themed to a mission to one of Saturn's moons, the ride's titular Hyperion of course, and the theming in and around the station vaguely reflects this, with blue atmospheric lighting on TV screens in the queue, as well as a large spacecraft hung from the ceiling as you ascend the main queue line's ramp. As you make your way around the very long standby queue line and into the pre-staging area, these blue lights follow you too, but on the outside portion of the queue, these lights seemingly stop. The station itself is themed like a NASA-style space station, with the entry portal into the lift hill also decked out with the blue lighting and a counter from 10 down to 0. I'm assuming that this was a launch counter at one point, though on the 2 occasions I visited Energylandia myself, I've never actually seen that for myself. The trains themselves are decked out a little like a spacecraft of some kind, sporting a very fetching blue, white and black colour scheme. Intamin's trains always seem to carry on the theming, and as such, you see this a lot when you're in the front row, as the entire front row is shaped like a dashboard of a vehicle and has Hyperion emblazoned across it in large writing. This is very visible during most POVs of this ride, whether it's a static one or a 360 view like my own. The outside of the station area and maintenance shed also carry this theme on, with large transmission towers displaying the Hyperion moniker on them too, and a very nice freestanding structure next to the exit, which doubles as a churro shop and also the top floor of a viewing platform. But be careful on the stairs up to this viewing platform when it's icy. Overall for the theming, it's a solid theme and one that carries all the way through the ride, and as such, I would rate the theming on Hyperion to be a 9 out of 10. Now we go on to talk about the ride experience, and with this one, I'll start off a little differently to before to explain the grouping system a little bit more, as I would say this counts as part of the overall experience. As I mentioned before, the pre-staging area of Hyperion Station is split into 4 lines. No matter whether you're entering via the Fast Pass or Standby queue line, it's free access to all of them. To the far left, you have a dedicated front row queue. During each cycle, this gate admits 4 riders only, just enough to fill the row. Next to this is the so-called single rider line. I say it's so-called because I spotted a lot of groups in this line. This ride line admits 6 riders per cycle. Second from the right and on the far right, you have 2 other riders queues, otherwise referred to as the free-for-all queues. These both accommodate 8 riders in each cycle. So, if you're doing the maths, this equates to a total of 26 riders per train, arranged in 7 rows of 4 across. Wait a minute. 26? Yes, you heard that right. That's because the single rider line admits 6 riders at the beginning of the loading cycle and tends to reopen to allow an additional 2 in at the very end. Once you're through your selected turnstile, you either climb a few stairs or head up a gradual ramp, in the back door only, to wait by a door that corresponds to the queue you're in. You'll find that from the free-for-all queues, the amount of people in this queue seems to mysteriously double as you get to the door. This is because both queues simply merge into one at the end and by the door itself. The doors then open, leading onto the station platform and into behind the air gates. You take your selected row and wait to be called forward via the gates opening. The trains themselves are akin to Intamin's Skyrush style trains. These have a lower wing seat either side and a raised pair of central seats. You take your seat, pull down the over-the-shoulder lap bar, and if you can, do up your seatbelt. If not, a ride-up will help you with this, including being considerably forceful in stapling you down to your seat. A word of warning to those in the front row. You get given goggles regardless of the time of year. This is because of the high speeds and likely fast-moving insects, or potentially ducks, in the air. Once everyone's seated and restraints fastened, the sound of a siren fills the station. From the front row, you'll see the lift chain begin to speed up, waiting to accept your train. The train pulls out of the station and engages the lift chain and starts to ascend the 253 foot or 77.1 metre tall lift hill at a pretty brisk pace. Once you crest the lift hill, prepare for the madness of an Intamin first drop. All Intamin Hyper seem to deliver an amazing first drop, and Hyperion is no exception to this. From the front, you seem to be suspended over the precipice for what seems like an eternity before enough of the train has caught you up to fling you down the 269 foot or 82 metre drop. The drop itself is 85 degrees in angle, but feels almost vertical at the midpoint. This is one fantastic drop for the feeling it gives, especially from the back or if you're riding at night. At the back, you receive very strong and very sustained ejector airtime as you're thrown over the crest, and even some sustained and very strong floater up front due to the way the drop is profiled. At the bottom of the first drop, you valley out and then head into a tunnel that goes slightly subterranean. This is where the ride gains its additional 16 feet compared to the lift hill. Here, you also hit the ride's top speed of 88 miles an hour, high Back to the Future, or 142 kilometers an hour. The pull-out from the previous drop is very intense, pulling a max of 4.5 Gs. and this is likely where you receive that dose of force. It offers some very acceptable positive Gs and may even see some riders begin to grey out in the valley of the tunnel. Valleying out, you begin to ascend whilst you're in the tunnel, and as I just mentioned, you start to climb out, and then you ascend this absolutely wonderful camelback hill. For me, this second hill is the best moment on the ride, period. Why? Well, it's mainly because each and every ride, my extremely portly backside left the seat and stayed out of it, only dropping back down when you were back over the other side of the hill. Yes, the ejector on this hill is so strong and sustained, I honestly thought I was going to be catapulted out of my seat and propelled to a height equaling that of the nearby planes entering and exiting Krakow. Pulling out from the absolutely sublime camelback, the next element is a continuation of all of the good forces on this ride, this time dishing up a healthy portion of positive Gs in the valley, before again rising up into the turnaround of this ride, a half camelback, half dive loop concoction. To begin with, Hyperion rises up out of the previous pullout and traverses an element that resembles an airtime-filled camelback. In the front of the train, you're subtly levitated out of your seat at the crest, before being very forcefully flung to the right and up if you're on the left side, and to the right and down if you're on the right. It's a strange sensation this, getting flow to airtime while simultaneously being laterally spun about the train's axis. And it doesn't end there, as before you completely invert, you're violently thrown downwards into the looping half of the dive loop. Once you level out from the inversion, Hyperion brings you back to ground level before being sent upwards and tilting to the left, this time for a nice Stengel dive that takes place alongside the ride's previous inversion entry. Now, not only is this one loaded with laterals, flinging you to the left no matter where you're sat on the train, it also has a little bit of airtime at the crest too. So, depending on where you sit, you'll either gracefully levitate sideways out of your seat, or get thrown out. Forces here tend to be better experienced from the back. Exiting out of the previous Stengel dive, Hyperion then entered into a rather underwhelming camelback with no force, just speed and height. You then head through a very low to the ground speed hill. This doesn't really deliver anything in terms of forces no matter where you sit in the train, and to be honest, I found these to be quite an underwhelming pair of elements. After the underwhelm of the previous speed hill and camelback, Hyperion then takes you into a large left-handed overbank turn, and combining airtime with laterals once again, this element really does serve up something magical. First of all, you get the positive Gs as you rise into the turn, then lateral whip as you crest, combined with a light pinch of floater on the way through the angled section. Dropping down, you also get served more sustained laterals as you drop into what follows. I enjoyed this one, and its placement right by the front gate of Energylandia and under the lift hill really serves as a showpiece for this ride. Exiting the previous overbank, the rest of the ride now stays low to the ground and highlights Hyperion's sense of speed, of which it's still carrying a lot, especially after the overbank and speed hill. First of all, you get a quick little bit of floater from this low to the ground bunny hill. Then, without warning, you're once again whipped up and to the right in a lower but still fun Stengel dive. This does pack a little bit of laterals in, but the airtime is less pronounced on this one than the previous one, so it's better in the back for the forces, but for the sense of speed, you need the front. Hyperion then takes you into a slightly rising banked right turn. The laterals are good if you're on the left of the train on this one, and the exit out of the previous Stengel dive really serves to keep you in your seat, but almost falling out to the side as you traverse it, so it carries into some good positive Gs. Next, you are whipped around this low and tight right-left S-hill. As the train is still carrying a fair bit of speed here, you may get a little floater on the crest between the two hills, but no laterals on this one. Nonetheless, I found it a fun element. All that remains of Hyperion now is a blast to the finish line, but there are still one or two more tricks in the playbook before we get there. The best this ride had to offer has already been and gone, but nonetheless Hyperion ready to finish strong. First, you head into this bunny hill that passes you under the overbank turn from earlier in the ride. This one really forcefully throws you skyward at the crest without expecting it at all, eliciting screams of joy as it does so. Honestly, I thought I was heading towards Katowice this time. Coming out of the previous bunny hill, you head back towards the ground again, but instead of colliding with it, you head through a small pond containing fountains which act like a splashdown element. They trigger just as the train passes, and in summer, reward riders with a beautiful refreshing blast of cold water. There's also some good come down positive Gs here, but the fountains are inactive in winter months for obvious reasons. We've pretty much reached the end of the road, but for one last surprise, Hyperion takes you uphill with a sudden final airtime pop. As you crest, you get a little bit of eject from the back, but not that much up front. Then you hit the downward slope brake run, past the viewing area that I mentioned earlier, and take a 180-degree turn past the maintenance shed into the station. Pulling into the station, the bars release, then you wonder what the honk just happened here, and end your 4,757 foot or 1,450 metre long experience. In total, I've had 4 rides on Hyperion, 2 on hot autumn days, where one was a front right wing and one was a back centre seat ride, and another winter night ride on the front right wing seat, and a winter twilight ride on the front left wing seat. So all in all, I've had enough rides in enough places to form a pretty reasonable opinion on this one. There are some areas where it left me wanting more, for example the underwhelming speed hill in Camelback, and the turnaround following the second Stengel dive. However, all in all, this was a pretty good experience, and definitely worth the ride if you visit Energylandia. So what would I rate Hyperion's ride experience? Well, I'd give it a 9 out of 10 for the reasons I mentioned above. There was a period of time where I put it tentatively at number 1 on my rankings, but after a winter back road ride on nearby Zadra, subject of another up-and-coming review, I consider my mind well and truly changed. So, with one of our primary focuses being how easy coasters and rides are for disabled people to access and use, that brings us neatly into accessibility. This ride, provided you get the Energy Pass, is relatively physically accessible, and even for an ambulant wheelchair user, as there are only 3 steps to get to the pre-stage area, and then, depending on your preference for rows, a maximum of another 8 steps into the station, followed by maybe 10 to 12 back down on the other side to get out. Provided you're not being rushed, I would consider this manageable. Physical waiting time again varies depending on whether you get the Energy Pass. Seriously, do it if you're stopping at Western Camp because it's so cheap. But it can go anywhere from 2 to 20 minutes in the pre-stage area, assuming you opt for the front row and the pen is full to capacity. If you use the normal queue during peak, prepare for a lot of stairs and ramps, and up to 60 minutes of waiting time before even reaching the pre-stage. This is egregious and will be factored into my final score later. There's no accessibility entrance of note, something shared by pretty much all the rides here, which isn't the best thing to shout about. And there's also no step-free access, so I can't really positively rate the queuing experience from the point of view of someone with physical mobility issues here. Being generous, I'd say maybe 4 out of 10, which is a turnaround from how I've previously reviewed it. However, I've taken a lot more into it to factor in this decision. The station isn't bumpy or uneven, and thanks to the designs of the trains themselves, there is no issue with physical access to the ride vehicle. The floors are nearly level with the platform, give or take about an inch, but that's nothing in my opinion, meaning completely-ish level boarding. The seats are highly comfortable and bolster you in well at the sides, offering ample lateral support. The central nutbuster may be a bit large for shorter riders, but use the wing seats to avoid having to go over this so much. The base of the seats themselves are exceedingly comfortable and lightly padded enough for the 2-minute ride experience, offering plenty of support. The restraints are Intamin's current over-the-shoulder lap bar with a central redundant seatbelt. This may be a bit cumbersome to operate for those who suffer with dexterity issues, but the ride-ups will be more than willing to assist you in doing so, as they have for me on every occasion that I've ridden. The restraint itself is ergonomic and comfortable, sitting on the lap, and doesn't crush your thighs as you ride, which is a big bonus to really help you experience the airtime at its best. The bar itself doesn't slip down further as the ride progresses, meaning one single position fix and an enjoyable ride, even for someone with physical or ambulant disabilities. The track work is fine. There's no excessive jolting or jostling on this one, despite some reports of a bit of a rattle, which I've never personally experienced and personally I'm not really sensitive to anyway. There's no rust spots or janky transitions either, meaning your experience will be nothing short of a thrilling one, and because the final brake run is LSM magnets, that means that yes, you'll decelerate quickly, but you'll also critically decelerate smoothly. The train and accessibility and ride comfort will be scored at a 9.5 for this reason. Moving on, I didn't see Energylandia making any accommodations for disabilities once again during my winter visit, and yeah, sure, it could be done, but I don't tend to witness these things during a normal traversal of the park. One accommodation that glares me would be to lower the blue in the lighting package, as well as reduce the loud sounds in the theme audio and the station. There's a loud siren that blares just before dispatch, and it is totally unexpected, meaning no warning to shield your ears. There's also no step-free access, as I mentioned before, not even a wheelchair lift, meaning that even if you were mostly wheelchair-bound, you better pray that you have an additional person with you to guard your chair while you ride, as there's also nowhere to store it. It'd be easy enough to implement disabled access via the exit stairs, as there are few enough stairs for an ambulant wheelchair user to just about cope, and a little space on the platform for the wheelchair to stay between rides if it needed it. All it would need is a lift. For accommodations then, I rate Hyperion at a 5 out of 10, and that's pushing it yet again. Overall, factoring everything in for accessibility on Hyperion, I'm left in a bit of a tough spot. I want to rate it highly, but I just can't. So Hyperion gets an overall accessibility rating of 6.1 out of 10. Please work on this, Energylandia. The ride is so good, but this is where it gets let down. So, those are all my thoughts on every single aspect of Hyperion, the amazing Intamin mega coaster at Energylandia. What did you think of my ratings? Did you agree with the scores? If you enjoyed the video and it made you go, ooh, I like that, or pooick, or whatever the cool kids in England shout these days in their sleep, then there is of course a button just for that right down below. We also welcome respectful comments on the ride or your own thoughts and feedback, so please stick them in the box down below. We're also on Instagram and TikTok. Those are @AccessAdrenaline and @access.adrenaline respectively. We've recently begun our journey on the Book of Faces, and that handle is also @AccessAdrenaline and is tied to our Instagram, so be sure to follow us on there. We're looking into membership options like Patreon and Ko-Fi, so stick around and you'll hear more on that soon. Planning is happening soon for where we go next, as we have a few ideas on the cards for this year, and we're in the process of finalising before the season begins. In the meantime, that's been all from this review of Hyperion at Energylandia in Poland. I've been Jonny. This has been another ride review from Access Adrenaline, where we aim to help deliver those theme park thrills for all. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and we will see you next time. Toodaloo!